I never thought I'd be the guy writing a story like this, but here I am. My name's Jason and I'm 34. I've been with my wife, Emily, for about 6 years now. We got engaged 2 years ago and were supposed to get married last month. Honestly, I thought we had a pretty solid relationship. Sure, we had our disagreements, but I never suspected she'd do something this messed up. Looking back, there were little signs I ignored. She started spending more time out with her friends, sometimes late into the night. She'd come home exhausted, tired, and sometimes just plain defensive if I asked where she'd been. She would brush it off like it was no big deal, say she was hanging out or having drinks with her friends, but I could tell there was something off. She'd get snippy if I pressed her, telling me I was overthinking or that I didn't trust her. I did trust her, at least I thought I did, until a few strange things started piling up. One day, I noticed her phone was left on the nightstand, an open message thread with her best friend Jake. I'd seen Jake around a few times. He was a good-looking guy with a playful smirk, and honestly, I always thought he was a bit too close to Emily. But I never thought he'd cross any lines. I saw a message from her that said, "Can't wait to see you tonight. Missed you today." That was strange because she'd told me she was working late, and the way she responded to his texts, quick, flirty, kind of possessive, set off a warning bell in my head. I also started noticing her phone going off at weird times, her being weirdly secretive about where she was when she left the house, and her hiding her phone when I came into the room. She'd get defensive if I asked about her whereabouts and would say things like, "You're crazy, Jason. Stop snooping." But I wasn't snooping. I just noticed her behavior change. It was subtle at first, but enough to make me suspicious. I brushed it off, thinking maybe I was overreacting. But then came the day I found out for sure. It happened when I accidentally saw her car parked outside Jake's house one evening. I was on my way home from work, and I saw her get out of her car, then immediately get into Jake's. My stomach sank. I watched her go inside. I couldn't believe it. That's when I knew she was cheating on me. Not just with Jake, but for months. The realization hit like a punch in the gut. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach all over again, and I couldn't breathe for a second. I decided to follow her. I parked a few blocks away, trying to be discreet. I saw her come out of Jake's house about an hour later, looking flushed but happy. She got into her car and started driving home. I followed at a distance, heart pounding. When she finally pulled into our driveway, I just sat there trying to process what I'd seen. I knew I couldn't ignore it anymore. This wasn't just a fling. She'd been sneaking around behind my back for months, and I was done pretending I didn't know. I felt angry, betrayed, and completely crushed. That's when I decided I'd confront her. No more hiding. I needed to hear what she had to say, even if I already knew the truth. The moment I saw her step out of Jake's house and get into her car, I knew I couldn't just ignore it. I sat there in my car, watching her drive away, feeling my stomach knot tighter with every second. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I kept replaying everything I'd seen, her sneaking out, the way she looked at Jake, the way she'd lied about her late nights. It all clicked into place like a terrible puzzle I'd been blind to putting together for months. The next morning, I woke up angry and exhausted. I knew I had to confront her, but I wasn't sure how or when. I didn't want to do it impulsively, but I also couldn't hold it in anymore. I decided to wait until she got home from work. I had to get her alone, face her without distractions. When she walked in, her usual bubbly attitude seemed forced, like she was trying to hide something. She immediately tried to brush past me, but I stopped her. "So, Emily," I said, voice steady but tense, "I saw you last night at Jake's house. You went in and didn't come out for over an hour. Care to explain what's going on?" Her eyes widened, and her face froze for a split second. Then she looked at me with that same bitchy, dismissive smirk she always had when she thought she was in control. "Oh, come on, Jason. You're overreacting. It's just Jake. We're just friends. You're being paranoid." I felt a surge of rage. Friends don't spend hours alone in someone's house, Emily. And don't give me that just friends bullshit. I saw how you looked when you got in the car. You're lying. She rolled her eyes, crossing her arms. "You're crazy. You think I'm cheating? That's ridiculous. Maybe I was just visiting to talk about some stuff. You're so insecure, you always think the worst." I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm but feeling the heat rising in my chest. Don't lie to me. I've had enough. I saw you. I followed you. You've been sneaking around for months, haven't you? Her expression hardened. You don't know what you're talking about. This is all some huge misunderstanding. You're overthinking. Jake and I, yeah, we kissed once a long time ago, but it was just a mistake. I told you it was a mistake, and I never did. Anything after that, you have no proof we're still cheating. That's when I lost it. I started listing everything I'd discovered, the secret texts, the late nights, her changing stories. Her trying to deny everything just made it worse. She threw in a few classic lines like, "You're crazy, I love you, and you're imagining things," but I'd heard enough. The truth was staring me in the face. She had been lying, cheating, and betraying me behind my back for months. And she didn't even have the decency to be honest about it. I told her I needed some space to think. I left the house and drove to a bar, trying to process what I just learned. I kept asking myself how I didn't see it coming, how I was so blind to her lies. I felt betrayed, embarrassed, and honestly like an idiot for not noticing the signs sooner. I kept thinking about all the plans we made, the future I thought we had, and how it had all been a lie. I hated myself for feeling so stupid, but I also hated her for the way she'd played me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying everything, trying to find a way to fix this or understand why she'd do something so cruel. That's when I made a decision. I wasn't going to let her get away with this, no way. I was going to find out just how deep the betrayal went, and I was going to make sure she paid for it. I didn't know exactly what my plan was yet, but I knew I wasn't going to let her win. Not without a fight. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. My head was pounding, my stomach was twisted in knots, and all I could think about was how much I hated her, Emily, my wife, the woman I thought I knew. But I also knew I had to act fast. If she was lying about Jake, there might be more. I couldn't just sit around waiting for her next move. I decided to do some digging, call it a kind of investigation. I started with her phone, trying to find anything that would give me more truth. I knew I wasn't supposed to invade her privacy, but at that point I didn't care. I grabbed her phone when she was distracted, scrolled through her messages, her social media, and her emails. It wasn't long before I found more evidence than I expected. Screenshots of late-night texts, flirtatious messages, a few explicit photos that Jake had apparently sent her. My stomach turned to acid as I looked through everything. There were messages like, "Can't wait to see you tonight, babe," from her to Jake whenever she thought I wasn't looking. And the way she talked to him, like he was her everything, made my blood boil. I saw a string of messages over the last few months, each more degrading and heartbreaking than the last. She told him she loved him, that she couldn't get enough of him, and that she hated the thought of being without him. I knew then that it wasn't just a fling. It was an affair that had gone on far longer than I thought, and she'd been lying to my face the entire time. I felt sick walking around the house, knowing she'd been lying right in front of me. I had to confront her again, but this time I had proof. I didn't want her to deny it anymore. I needed her to come clean, knowing I wasn't just imagining things. I waited until she got home from work, then called her into the bedroom. I threw her phone onto the bed and pointed at the screen. "You want to keep lying? Look at this." I showed her the messages. Her face went pale, her eyes darted away. She stammered, trying to come up with some excuse, but I didn't let her get away with it. I told her I knew everything, that she'd been cheating on me with Jake for months. She looked stunned at first, then angry. "Jason, this is not what it looks like," she hissed, flipping her hair and rolling her eyes. "You're making a big deal out of nothing. We were just having fun. It meant nothing, I swear." Her voice was full of defiance, like she thought she could just brush it off because she was hot and wanted. I couldn't believe her. How could she be so callous, so manipulative? I yelled at her, telling her I saw through her lies. I told her that I knew about the cheating, the texts, the nights she spent with Jake. I told her I was done being played, but she just shrugged and said, "You're overreacting, Jason. You're just jealous because you're not enough. Jake's better in bed than you ever were anyway. Maybe I needed someone who could actually satisfy me." That was the moment I realized she was a total bitch about this. She didn't even try to deny the sex, just threw it in my face like it was some kind of power move. She was a manipulative, selfish woman who thought she could lie her way out of it. I felt a mixture of rage and heartbreak. I wanted to hit her, scream at her, hurt her. I felt so betrayed, so humiliated. How could she do this to me, to us, to everything we'd built? I told her I didn't want to hear any more lies. I said I was done, that I needed space to think, and I wanted her to leave for a while. She looked at me with that same bitchy smirk, trying to act like she was the victim. She told me I was overreacting, that I was paranoid, that I was crazy. But I knew the truth now, and I wasn't going to pretend I didn't see it. As she packed her things, she threw one last dagger at me. "You're pathetic, Jason. You'll get over this. Jake is better than you anyway." That's when I realized this wasn't just some mistake or a fleeting affair. She'd been playing me all along, and I'd been too blind to see it. The pain hit hard, but at that moment, I knew I had to decide what to do next. I couldn't keep living in this betrayal. I had to figure out how to get her out of my life for good, and how to reclaim whatever shred of dignity I had left. After she left that night, I was left in an apartment that suddenly felt colder and emptier than it ever had before. The silence was deafening, and I couldn't stop replaying everything she had said or done. Part of me wanted to call her, to yell at her, to demand she come back and explain herself. But deep down, I knew I couldn't do that. She'd already crossed the line, and there was no going back. I decided I needed a plan, not just to get rid of her physically, but to make sure she understood what she'd lost. For the first time in years, I actually started thinking about revenge, what I could do that would send her a message she wouldn't forget. I wasn't going to just divorce her and move on quietly. No, I wanted her to feel the full weight of what she'd done. She thought she was clever, sneaking around, lying, cheating, using her looks and charm to manipulate everyone around her. She was wrong. I was going to show her that I wasn't just some naive husband who'd let it slide. The first thing I did was gather all the evidence. Every text, every photo, every message, photographed and saved on my laptop. I wasn't taking any chances. I knew she'd try to deny everything or spin some story. I wanted to be prepared to destroy her reputation if I needed to. I also started talking to a lawyer. I wanted to make sure I knew my rights and what kind of leverage I had. I wasn't just going to walk away empty-handed. Meanwhile, I also started plotting how I'd confront her again. Not just about the affair, but about how I'd make her regret what she did. Maybe I'd expose her to her friends, her family, anyone who might hurt her the way she'd hurt me. I wanted her to feel what it was like to be betrayed, to be humiliated, to be completely powerless. I wasn't about to let her get away with it all without some kind of payback. Of course, I was furious. Every time I saw her face in my mind, I felt this burning rage. I was angry she'd cheated, angry she'd lied, angry she'd played me for a fool. But more than the anger, I felt heartbreak, like I'd lost part of myself. I trusted her, loved her, and she turned out to be someone I didn't even recognize. Every memory of our good times now seemed tainted. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I'd been so blind. It hurt to think about all the future plans we'd made: wedding, honeymoon, building a life together, and how she'd thrown it all away for some stupid affair. So I decided I wouldn't just react impulsively. I'd be smart about this. I started planning the next moves carefully, waiting for the right moment. I knew I'd confront her again, but I wanted to be in control. I wanted her to see that I wasn't some naive idiot who'd take her back after she cheated. I was going to make her regret everything. I also knew I'd need to distance myself emotionally first. I couldn't let her see how much she'd hurt me. I had to be cold, calculating, and ready to strike back hard. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on my couch, staring at my phone, thinking about how much my life had changed in just a few days. I'd gone from being happy, secure, hopeful about our future, to feeling betrayed, humiliated, and furious. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do next, but I knew I couldn't let her get away with it. I owed myself at least that much. I'd figure out the rest as I went. But one thing was certain: she was going to regret this. She was going to wish she'd never crossed me. The days that followed were a blur of planning and trying to keep my cool. I didn't want her to see how much she'd broken me, but I also knew I couldn't let her think she was winning. Every time I saw her name pop up on my phone or her face in my mind, I felt this mix of rage and sadness. I had to be methodical. I needed to make her realize that her actions had consequences, and I wasn't going to be the one to suffer quietly. I started by shutting her out emotionally. No more texts, no more calls. I stopped responding to her attempts at apology or excuses. I knew she was trying to manipulate me, to play the victim, but I refused to let her. I wanted her to feel exactly how I felt, betrayed, humiliated, and powerless. Meanwhile, I kept gathering evidence, making sure everything was documented. I wanted her to see that I was serious about exposing her if she tried to deny or spin the story. Then I reached out to a few friends I trusted, people who knew about Emily and her manipulative streak. I told them everything, showed them the messages, and asked for advice. Some of them told me to just cut her loose, move on, and rebuild. Others said I should confront her again, but this time with a clear plan. I listened to all of them, but ultimately I decided I'd do both. I'd confront her, but I'd do it on my own terms. I wasn't going to let her cheat and lie her way out of it without consequences. One evening, I invited her over for a talk. I told her I gathered everything and I wasn't going to pretend anymore. I laid all the evidence on the table, her texts, her photos, her secret messages. Her reaction was priceless. She looked like she'd seen a ghost, then instantly switched into damage control mode. She started crying, begging me not to ruin her life, saying she'd made a mistake, that it was just sex, and that she never loved Jake, just got caught up in a moment. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I saw through her lies. I told her I wasn't interested in her excuses, that I knew she'd been lying for months, sneaking around, betraying everything we had. I told her I wanted her out of my house, permanently. She threw a fit, acting like I was overreacting, like I was the one who was crazy. She kept insisting it was just a mistake, that she loved me, and that she'd never do it again. I just looked at her and said, "You lied to my face. You cheated on me and used me. I don't want you in my life anymore." That was the night she finally broke down completely. She screamed, called me names, tried to blame me for everything, but I was done listening. I told her I file for divorce, that she could take her lies and her cheating and get out. She stormed out in a fury, but I felt a strange sense of relief, like I'd finally taken control of the situation, even if it hurt like hell. The aftermath was brutal. The silence in my house was deafening, and every day felt like walking through a nightmare. But I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I realized how much I'd been holding onto, how much I'd sacrificed for her. I saw her for what she was, a selfish, manipulative woman who had played me for months. Slowly, I started to rebuild myself piece by piece. I knew I'd be okay, even if it didn't feel like it now. I learned that there are limits to how much betrayal a person can take, and I'd reached mine. Now I just had to get through it and move on. The days after she left, I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, ready to fall but somehow still holding onto something solid beneath my feet. It was a mess of emotions: anger, sadness, humiliation, and a strange sense of relief I couldn't quite explain. I'd been blindsided by her betrayal, but now I saw things more clearly. I saw who she truly was: selfish, manipulative, a liar. And I saw who I was trying to be for her, a person who deserved better. I decided I wasn't going to wallow in despair or let her ruin what little dignity I had left. I cleaned out the house, got rid of her things, and blocked her on every social media platform. Truthfully, I didn't want her to have any more power over me. I wanted to own my story, no matter how painful it was. I also sought therapy. I needed to process what had happened, understand why I'd been so blind, and learn to rebuild my self-worth. In the months that followed, I focused on myself. I threw myself into work, started working out more, and reconnected with friends I'd neglected while trying to make things work with Emily. I realized I'd been living for her, sacrificing my happiness and peace of mind, and I'd let it go on far too long. That breakup, brutal as it was, became a turning point. I learned that I was stronger than I thought, strong enough to walk away from someone who didn't deserve me. Looking back, I see the lesson clearly. Trust is everything, and once broken, it's almost impossible to repair. But more than that, I learned that revenge isn't about getting even, it's about reclaiming yourself. About saying, "You can take my marriage, my trust, everything I thought I had, but I will rebuild without you and I will be better." Now I'm not perfect. I still have days when I get angry or feel stupid for trusting her. But I also have days when I feel free, like I've finally taken back control of my life. I've learned that some betrayals cut deep, but they don't have to define you. You get to decide what comes next. So here's my final thought. If you're going through something similar, don't let it break you. Understand that some people are just toxic, and once trust is gone, it's hard to get back. But you can rebuild. You can come out stronger. And most importantly, never let anyone make you feel like you're the crazy one when they're the ones lying in the first place. Trust your gut, gather your evidence, and take back your life. You deserve that much.